I still remember the sound of their laughter echoing through the house, mocking me, drowning out the frantic beating of my heart. Epidemic lore? You're going to ruin our name, Sarah! My father's voice had been the loudest, booming with authority, as if he could will my passion into silence. My mother had merely scoffed, her eyes rolling with contempt. You'll end up in a padded room. You know that, right? They said. The weight of their disbelief crushed me, but it also ignited a fire inside me, a relentless need to prove them wrong. Years later, I returned home, not as the frightened girl they had ridiculed, but as a woman cloaked in the shadows of knowledge. I had become an expert in forbidden epidemic lore, a title that had morphed from a punchline into a bone-chilling warning. The world had come to fear the truths I unearthed, the dark knowledge I had fought so hard to expose. Yet the cost of that knowledge had been steep, and I could feel it clinging to me like an old, tattered shroud. As I drove down the familiar street, the trees lining the road seemed to whisper secrets to me. Stories of illness and decay, of ancient curses lurking beneath the skin of the mundane. I could almost taste the dread in the air, thick and cloying, like the miasma of a long-forgotten plague. The house stood before me, unchanged, but I knew it was a mere facade, just like my family. The moment I stepped inside, the air grew heavy with unspoken words. They stared at me, their eyes wide with disbelief, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of satisfaction. I was no longer the little girl they had shamed. I was the embodiment of every warning they had dismissed. "You're back," my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "We didn't think you'd actually come." "Neither did I replied, my tone laced with an edge of bitterness. "But I have something to show you." I could feel their skepticism ripple through the room, the tension thickening like fog. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small vial filled with a dark, viscous liquid, a sample I had collected from a recent outbreak linked to an ancient legend. "This," I declared, "is the essence of a curse, a tangible remnant of what you deemed ridiculous." Their laughter died in their throats, replaced by a tense silence. I watched as their expressions transformed from disbelief to something far more profound, fear. "What do you mean, a curse?" my father asked, his voice shaky. "Do you remember the stories? The ones you called fairy tales?" I pressed on, my heart racing. The tales of the plague keeper, an ancient figure who was said to walk among the sick, spreading not just disease, but despair itself. I leaned closer, the shadows deepening around me. "What if I told you that he's real, that his legacy lives on in the shadows of our cities?" "Sarah," my mother began, her voice breaking, "we thought you were just obsessed. You can't." "Can't what?" I interrupted, the thrill of vindication surging through me. "Can't face the truth? You laughed at me when I said there was a connection between folklore and the diseases ravaging our world. You said I was crazy." I could see the realization dawning in their eyes, the dawning horror of what they had dismissed. And then, as if the air itself had shifted, the lights flickered. "The plague keeper is here," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the cacophony. "And he's come to collect what's owed." Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a figure, a dark silhouette with hollow eyes that glinted like obsidian. It loomed over us, the very embodiment of the despair I had uncovered. I watched my family's faces twist in terror, their earlier mockery replaced by raw, visceral fear. They were witnessing the horrors I had survived, the darkness that had become my reality. "Why did you mock me?" I cried out, rage and sorrow intertwining. "You called me delusional, but I was the one who saw what you refused to believe. Now you will face the consequences of your disbelief." The figure moved closer, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. My family huddled together, their eyes wide with terror as they realized the truth. They had not just abandoned me. They had invited this darkness into their lives with their scorn. The shadows enveloped them, and I could see them trembling, their faces pale as the figure extended a hand towards them. "You laughed at the plague, and now you will know its weight," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "You will understand the cost of ignorance." And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the figure vanished, leaving my family gasping in the oppressive silence. The lights flickered back on, revealing their ashen faces, the remnants of their laughter replaced by a haunting realization. I stood there, no longer consumed by rage, but rather by a profound sense of loss. "You may never understand the truths I've uncovered, but you will no longer mock me," I said, my voice steady. "You will carry the weight of your disbelief." As I turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. They would never know the horrors I had faced, but they would carry the burden of their choices. I stepped into the night, the shadows wrapping around me like a cloak, knowing that I had finally emerged from the darkness, not as a disgrace, but as a harbinger of truth. In the end, it was not just my triumph, but a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truths lie just beneath the surface, waiting for those who dare to look. And in that moment, I knew the world would never forget the name Sarah, the epidemiologist who had uncovered the horrors hidden in folklore, and the woman who had watched her family face the consequences of their disbelief.